Hello everyone, I am Jonathan Little, and we are here today with another hand from the $1,500 buy-in shootout final table now. We are down to, I believe, 9 players, and I don't remember how much I got for this final table. I think, spoiler alert, I'm going to lose this hand. I think I got something like 15,000 bucks, so 10 buy-ins, not a great success. Very likely first place was 120,000 or 150,000, so a bit of a bummer. But you don't get to pick when you win. So here, we're facing a raise from a tight aggressive player who is playing 64 big blinds deep. He has, we're playing a little bit deeper than him. Everyone else is a little bit deeper as well. And we get aces. So in this scenario, I remember the player on the button and the small blind had been particularly loose and aggressive and maniacal. And because of that, I'm going to make a play I almost never make, which is to call. If I thought these players were normal, I would definitely 3-bet this. It's a no-brainer 3-bet. Aces are obviously good. If you're not 3-betting aces, well, you're probably not 3-betting much, right? So this is a situation where I am adjusting to take advantage of what I think my opponent's mistakes are. Funny enough, I actually remember a hand I played in a major online tournament on a Sunday a long, long time ago when we were down to, I think, 13 people. First place was like 300,000 bucks. That would have been life-changing for me. I was a young kid. I must have been 21 or 22 years old. And a situation very much like this came up where someone raised. I called off like a 30 big blind stack with aces. The button and the small blind were both maniacal jammers. One of them jammed all in. I'm like, oh, I got him. I'm going to win the tournament. Folds back to me. Obviously, I call. He has ace jack offsuit, and it comes like jack, jack, 6, 4, 2. And I'm out. So that was not fun. Sometimes that play does backfire, but if you do think the players yet to act are very squeeze happy or just generally 3-betting a ton, you want to set them up as much as you can. And if someone did 3-bet here, by the way, I would have called. I'm not going to re-raise them back. Very often that looks like a hand like queens, jacks, tens, ace, king. And, your opponent just can't defend very well against that, especially if they're opening with a lot of junk. So I'm going to slow play this quite hard. Instead, we get not exactly what we want. Small blind calls and big blind calls. Okay. Comes king 6-5. Tight aggressive player bets 75K. Well, obviously we're not folding the aces. So the question is, do we call or do we raise? And I think both plays are fine. If you think about my range, it should be a lot of hands like king, queen, king, jack, which are definite calls here. It could also be a lot of hands like 6s and 5s or 6-5 suited. I would probably want to raise with those. I could also have a hand like 8-7 suited. I could have a lot of diamond draws. I'd like to raise with those too. So if you think about my value range, aces probably fits in my nut hand range at this point. So I don't see a problem with raising. At the same time, though, if you remember back, I mentioned this was a very, in the previous video I made for Poker News. Make sure you go back and watch those if you have not. I spent a lot of time making that for you. So go back, absorb the content. The payout structure is relatively flat in this tournament, where every time someone busts, you move up a payout spot. And in general, that should lead you to play a little bit more cautiously, because if you can ever not go broke here whenever the hijack happens to have kings or 6s or 5s, well, that's fantastic, right? And if you look at how deep we are, our opponent may not put us all in by the river. So that's a reason to call. Also, calling just keeps people in bluffing. Raising, though, also does make the players in the blinds fold a lot of their gut shot draws and maybe like bad flush draws and stuff like that. So that would be pretty nice if we could get them to fold equity. But here I decided to call. Turns to 2. Opponent keeps betting. And he bets big. So now the idea of not being all in by the river just went out the window, because obviously he can shove the river because pot's going to be 750. So he likes his hand or he has a draw. Given he likes his hand or has a draw, what do I need to do here? Well, thinking back at this spot more, I think I should probably jam. And the reason I think I should shove is because if he does have a draw, he may not bluff on the river, which would be very bad. Meaning he only puts more money in the pot on the river when he gets there, or mostly puts it in on the river when he gets there. And if he has a nut hand, obviously he's not ever folding the nut hand. And if a diamond comes on the river, it's not like I'm able to bluff him off his pocket 6s. And I guess I save money when the diamond comes on the river, but I'm not sure that matters so much. At this point, once the pop does become this gigantic, there may be merit in just protecting my equity. But the opponent may also just have a hand like king, queen, or king, jack that he's betting for protection to try to make me fold what he may think is an obvious draw. And if that's the case, then I definitely want to call, right? Because king, queen is drawing very thin. And king, queen may actually fold if I shove, which would be horrible. So I would generally say as my opponent is more recreational, I'm going to be more inclined to call here. And as he becomes a better player, meaning he's probably just going to have either the few nut hands or the obvious draws, which there are a lot of, I'm going to be more inclined to shove. This time I do call, which, does make some sense. River's a 9 and he jams. Ugh. So, you all know me. I'm a bit of a calling station. And I'm probably going to call here. I already know I'm going to call because we already know I lose this hand. But thinking about the opponent's range, if he is a recreational player, would he now jam king, queen on the river? When one of the obvious draws comes in, right? It's not the most obvious draw, but 8-7 is a pretty obvious draw. So would he jam with that? I do not know. If he had king, queen, would he jam king, jack? Probably not. So what is he actually jamming this value hand? I mean, would he jam ace, king? Maybe, but I blocked that pretty hard. What about someone's vacuuming right outside? Go figure. I can't make the vacuum go away. It's continuing to go. Poor timing today. Anyway, in this scenario, I'm not sure he's shoving any worse hand for value. Or if he is, it's only just the 6 combinations of ace king. The way you figure out combinations is you take the number of unseen aces, which are 2, multiply it by the number of unseen kings, which is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. So 6 combinations of ace king are available. So I think this is very, very close and perhaps a fold. Now, you also have to ask, would the opponent actually bluff if he did have a busted flush draw? And that's the tough part. Would generic recreational players bluff with a flush draw here? And I don't know. Some people will, some people won't. And it's essentially impossible for me to know. In general, I would say a lot of people aren't just going to bet, jam into multiple players in situations like this at the final table of a tournament. But some people will. Good people will. So if the opponent is good, I think this is a pretty easy call. But if the opponent is straightforward, not trying to give his money away, I think this is probably a fold. I did not fold. Doesn't show his hand. I remember what he has, though. He had pocket kings. And I lost. So obviously, no matter how this hand plays out, I'm going to lose. As I played it, actually, this was like the one way I could have played this hand to perhaps get away from it on the river. Very rarely are you going to hear me saying that I probably could have gotten away from that. Because calling's pretty good. But if my opponent is that type of player I discussed, I think folding on this river is very, very reasonable. How much would I have had left? I would have had I'd have had 600K left playing 12,000 big blinds. So I would have had 50 big blinds left. Yeah, this is probably just a fold. This is likely a mistake. And that's annoying. You really don't want to make mistakes when lots of money is on the line. And I did that today. So notice this did not bust me. I was actually left with 10 big blinds. I folded a few hands. And then I got pocket queens. I jammed all in on my pocket queens. I got called by ace 8 in the big blind. And he got an ace, so I was out. So that was a bummer. It is very important, or if you can ideally do this, is to save some chips whenever you do lose the big hands. This happened to me recently in Montreal, where I was left with 4 or 5 big blinds after I lost another big hand to take 8th place. Seems similar to this. I'm the 8th place king, apparently. And someone busted between when I got short stacked and I busted. So I went from almost certainly taking 9th place if I just got all my money in there. Instead, I took 8th place and got something like a $30,000 payout jump, which is huge. So especially at final tables, do not give away your last bit of chips. Obviously here, I didn't have the opportunity, and I clearly would have called any amount. But I really do think this is a fold on the river, and I messed up. And that's unfortunate. Try to not mess up. Hopefully you learn from my mistakes. Hopefully you learn to not make videos when the vacuum is going outside. And you play better than I play. All right, good luck in your games. Have fun. I'll talk to you next week.